Hello, hello, and welcome to the Rock Metal Podcast. I'm your host, John Harris, and today on the Rock Metal Podcast, we have Lycanthro. They have a new album called Mark of the Wolf. It was released on June 4th via Alone Records. Right now, I'm being joined by James to share some more information about this stellar release, what the band has got going on. So, James, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, man. I'm stoked to be here, and I'm stoked to talk about our new material.
Beautiful. Okay. Well, I believe that is all I needed to just unleash the beast that is Mr. James Delbridge. So, sir, what is this album? Is it a concept album? Is there a theme to it?
No. Even though I am a huge fan of concept albums, and we will definitely do one in the future. But this album is kind of I mainly tell people that it's sort of like the culmination of like the early days of the band, because I'm actually the only one who's still in the band who is on this album, aside from our guitar player Forrest, like our new guitar player who just did a few solos on it. But this album was recorded a while back when it was still the old lineup, and and it just took a long time to put out, and by then, by the time it was done, the members that were on it were either they usually like left for they all left for like their own reasons and stuff like that. But this album is pretty much a culmination of all the songs that we used to like were like our live staples and stuff like that. And it was kind of like the earlier kind of sound of the band in terms of like we were a bit more thrashy, a bit more old school metal, as opposed to like the direction we're going in now, which is like the more traditional power metal route. So yeah, it's pretty much just people will be able to get a feel of how we were when we first started, and how these songs have matured and aged, as it were. So yeah.
So many questions come to mind, James. So many. I mean, we could start with devil's advocate questions. I think the main one is, how many people listening in right now have been in a band and you've got stuff recorded, and for whatever reason, members leave, the whole thing disbands, and it's just a very crushing, unsettling feeling.
Oh yeah, man, I'm actually surprised you brought that up. I haven't heard anybody say stuff like that, but I don't mind talking about that. It's just because it's just the thing with that is that a lot of people like know that like when you're in a band, there's always like one thing you always have to keep in mind is the egos. There's a lot of different personalities clashing with each other, and it's pretty. It honestly, the main problem, I guess, in our kind of camp is money, because I'm pretty much funding this whole album myself. Because I'm not going to ask my new guys to pay for an album that they're like to pitch for an album that they're not on. So yeah, that's pretty much been the biggest struggle of it. But yeah, no, it's I've heard that happen with so many bands before. Is like they'll record something and they'll spend all this money, and then two members will like have a fight and like hate each other and stuff like that. And then one will quit, or both will quit, or whatever. And then they'll have a record that they've paid hundreds or even thousands of dollars for, just sitting on their computer, and not knowing. And it's so unfortunate, because like, and it happens way more often than people think, because I find that nowadays a lot of people don't. And again, I learned this the hard way personally, but I find that a lot of bands don't plan things out and don't kind of have like a backup plan for things, because it's one of these things where a lot of people think that like when you're in a band, you're like, oh yeah, things are going to work out and things are going to, we're going to put out this album and then we're going to get lots of listeners and it's going to be great, blah, 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 blah. But a lot of bands, it's unfortunate that they kind of fall down that rut of, oh, we have personality clashes in the band and like some of the members hate each other. And if not hate each other, they're like resentful, or there's lots of tension or whatever. And then that boils over and then people leave and stuff like that. So yeah, it is a very unfortunate situation for sure. And it's happened to us a few times, but I find that a lot of times both parties are better for it. You know what I mean? Because it's almost like being in a it's almost like a bad breakup. You know what I mean? You know, it sucks at first, but you're usually better for it in the end. You know, like we've been like in terms of us, we've been doing a lot better with the new lineup like than we ever have, in my opinion. And the old members that were on this record, I don't know what a couple of them are doing right now. Our old drummer is in a new band now, and he's a lot happier now, and I still talk with him a lot and stuff like that. So yeah, it's just been it's a blessing and a curse at the same time. It's a double-edged sword, is what I'll say.
Mm-hmm. And I guess where I wanted to go next with that was, you know, so you got this record and this stuff with all the old band members on it. Did it ever feel like you had a product that you couldn't use?
Yeah. It's asking the hard questions today.
Well, I mean,
no, I love it. It's because I like getting stuff like that. That's different, you know. Mm-hmm. So
tell us about your influences. And then next question. So you play the guitar, and then next question.
I've already had in promoting this album, I've had a few like that, and it's just really awkward.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. Yeah, but there were a few times where I was thinking of just scrapping the whole thing, honestly, because there were just things where, like, in the recording process, there were times where we had to re-record things a lot. Like, for example, when we originally recorded the album, I did about maybe 1 or 2 songs when we were actually in the studio, like all of us. But then for the rest of the songs, I ended up going back just on my own and just to do them. And the first 2 songs I remember were fine. But I remember the rest of the time, I didn't know this at the time, but I had a vocal issue. I couldn't sing the way I usually do. And so I kind of, me being stubborn, I'm like, okay, you know, like push through it, blah, 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 make the best of it. And then when we got the mixes back, the vocals sounded awful. So I was like, man, just because, you know, I couldn't sing properly.
Yeah.
So I had to like record a lot of the vocals from home, and that was a really strenuous and stressful process, because it's like, even though like it's cool because, you know, you have all the time in the world, especially in like lockdown, and you're not like anxious because you're like, you know, time is money and stuff like that. But at the same time, you kind of need that other person there to tell you whether a take was good or not, because that's the most stressful part. Because, you know, there were many times where I would just be in a really pissed off mood and just be like, man, like, I'm never going to get this album done on my own, blah, 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 you know, just because it's been so difficult to do it. So yeah, I think like definitely the biggest challenge in terms of like thinking, oh, maybe it might not have turned out as good, just because we had to do a lot of we had to re-record a lot of things, not even just vocals, but we even had to re-record some of the guitars like from home. Like, it was, luckily during this pandemic, I discovered the beauty of amp simulators and how well they can be mixed in with the sounds from real amps as well. So we've had to do that too, because even in some of the mixes, like in the studio, looking back on it, I don't think a lot of us, like, some of the parts could have been better, I think. So that's why I'm like, no, I'm not putting out something that has, you know, subpar parts, like subpar playing. So we got our new guitar player to do some new solos and record some of the guitars at home as well. And again, yeah, it was a difficult process, and many times I thought about, you know, just scrapping it and doing something new, but just kept at it, and eventually we got this, and it turned out really well, in my opinion. So yeah.
So that kind of brings me another question, because I mentioned a lot of this was recorded in Lac-de-Loup, Quebec. So I guess what we're hearing, how much of that is from those days of the studio, and how much of it was redone at home?
I'd say probably about like 80-20. 80% of it was from the studio, and then like maybe 20% of it was from a home. Like, pretty much all the vocals on every song except for 2 I did at home, because the 2 songs that I recorded there that sounded fine were before I got the vocal issue.
Okay.
And then all of the drums and bass were done at Lac-de-Loup. 90% of the guitars were done at Lac-de-Loup. It's just, there was just a couple of things that we had to, I think in the last question I kind of maybe over-exaggerated. I think we just had to touch up a few things.
Okay.
And we can't really go to a studio, especially Lac du Loup is really far. Like, it's in the middle of nowhere, Quebec, you know? Like, it was a cool experience because it's literally recording in a log cabin. You know, it's literally in the basement of a log cabin. That's where this studio is, and it's awesome. But, yeah, so I think for guitar, so I'd say about 80-20. Like, a lot of the vocals were from home, and some of the guitar touch-ups were from home as well, but the rest of it was from the studio.
Okay. All right. You guys could stop for a little bit, have some beaver stew, get back to recording.
Yeah, man. Actually, that was funny because whenever we go there, we actually would stay like the weekend there, and we would just live off microwave food. Because in the studio, there was two rooms. There's a control room, and there was the live room where the drums and all the amps were and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And in between those was a little room where there was like a fridge and a freezer and stuff like that. And the only thing they had to warm up your food was a microwave. So we literally would live the whole weekend off microwave food. Yeah, it's nuts, man. Like, I actually have a very vivid memory of whenever I used to go there, I never used to get any sleep because we would have to, because what we would do is we would actually, since it's like about an hour out of town, we used to sleep there, and we would sleep in on sleeping bags in the live room. And I'm someone that I don't do well sleeping like in weird places like that. So I never get sleep. Maybe max I'll get 2 hours sleep just because I just don't I can't get used to the feeling. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I have a very vivid memory of waking up really early. Only got 2 hours of sleep. I'm sitting in this room where the microwave and everything is, and I'm sitting there on my laptop eating my freaking microwave freaking Kraft dinner or something. And I have next to me, I forgot what it was. Maybe it was like an apple strudel or something. And I remember there was in front of me there was a little a cabinet, almost like a cabinet with no doors on it. And literally I'm sitting there, and then I just see a mouse peer his head out of the cabinet, and he just starts eyeing my food. And I was startled at first, but I'm like, oh, we're in the country. There's mice everywhere. So I literally look at this mouse and go, no, it's my food. Get back in there.
Exactly. And maybe another devil's advocate question. Why a recording studio across provincial lines in the middle of nowhere?
It's because our engineer at the time, who was a good friend of ours, owned it. His name's Mike Bond, and he was my old professor at when I was in school for recording. And he told us, he's like, hey, I just opened a new studio. It's out in Quebec. It's in the country, and it's really great, and blah, blah. And we kind of thought, well, from learning under him, I'm like, this guy knows what he's doing, and he's very good at his work. So we thought, why not him to engineer the album? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of why. And it's not really as far as I was saying it was. It was mainly about it was mainly about an hour outside of town, which isn't really that bad, But
Montreal. Which town? Montreal?
No, it's actually okay. As Montreal is if you go Quebec, from Ottawa, if you go, I think, east. But this place is if you go north.
Oh, so from Ottawa?
Yeah, from north. So it's near Manawaki. It's on the way to Manawaki, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That is in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, pretty much. It's really beautiful out there, the scenery and all that stuff. But yeah, it's definitely very out of the way.
Okay, then. Perfect. And that's a completely different level of Quebec as well. I'm guessing you guys speak French, or you got in and out without getting shot at?
Yeah, we got in and out without getting shot at.
Okay.
None of it. Actually, at the... No, I was going to say is that I don't think there is anyone in the band now that does, but we always used to have at least one member that could speak fluent French, and it was usually our bass player, because we had two bass players in a row that they were both Quebecers, and they both spoke fluent French. Yeah. So whenever we needed someone to translate, it was usually them. And I actually remember our old bass player, Kyle, he's one of the old members I still keep in touch with sometimes, and he he used to literally roast, whenever he used to play in Quebec, he used to roast us in French to the audience, and we wouldn't know what he was saying because he would be talking in French in the mic.
Yeah.
And then I'd just be looking at him, I'd be like, "You're roasting us right now, aren't you?" But yeah, so at the time we always had at least one person in the band who could speak French. So if we met someone, if we were gonna play in Quebec and they didn't speak any English, we'd be like, "Hey, yo, can you talk to them?"
Mm-hmm. Parfait, monsieur, parfait. Okay, so we've chatted about lineup changes. We chatted about recording in Quebec. We chatted about beaver stew. It's greasy, guys. You might want to get your napkins out or your serviettes, depending on where in Canada you're from, while you're sitting on your Chesterfield. We chatted about the record, and initially I had said, Mark of the Wolf, is this it's a concept album? And you said it wasn't, and then that's how we started getting into a good bit of, those lineup changes. And I was just curious because I myself have been involved in bands, and I've chatted with other musicians countless times on this show, where you get to a certain point, things are looking great, and then it's almost like the rug just gets pulled out from under. You've got an album that's ready to go shop to a label, or even worse, you've shopped the album to a label, they've said yes, you're working out the negotiations, and then people start leaving, or something. It's just...
oh, yeah.
So I was just curious, like, hey, let's dive into that juicy peach and find out why you didn't just scrap it and say, you know what, I can't use this, but instead you said, you know what, I can use this, we're going to use this, and this is how it's going to be used, and we're still taking a path forward.
Yeah, no, but I guess the reason why is just because, well, the thing with our label is that our label's been really good to us because we were already on it when this album was done, because they signed us when we did with our previous EP, the Four Horsemen EP. And so I told him that, like, we were going to release it, like, no matter what. And the thing is that I'm someone that I'm very tenacious. So I'm someone that I don't really want to give up on things really easily. So even though I'm the only member who's still in the band who's on this album, again, aside from our guitar player who just did a couple of solos here and there on there. But it was mainly down to money, because it was like, okay, I've spent so freaking much on this album already. I'm not scrapping it and like pissing all that money like into the toilet. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that's why. And it's one of these things where like I thought that like a lot of these songs are not a lot of these. I said these songs are genuinely good, and there's even lots of songs because some of the songs on this album are songs that people that who know us very well like really like. Like there's songs on there that we always used to play live, and it was always the fan favorites and stuff like that. And I felt like, you know what? I said, okay, even though we've had a lot of setbacks, and even though with this new lineup, we're already writing new stuff, we're constantly coming up with new ideas and all that, I feel like these songs need to be heard, and they need to, have their place in our history as a band, and have have people enjoy them. Because so far, we only have one single out from the album so far, 2 next week, hopefully. But yeah, no, the reception's been amazing. Like we have like on one of our video for Crucible, like the kind of the visualizer video has it's almost at 1K views on our personal channel, and it's almost at 10K views on the new album Full Albums channel. That's a channel that it's a channel where this guy runs it, and he's like almost like a metal influencer, as it were. And if you get one of your songs on his YouTube channel, they'll get like thousands upon thousands of views, because the channel itself has almost 100,000 subscribers. So if you know the guy and then he'll put your stuff on his channel. He did that with us, and the song is almost at 10K views on there. And we've got nothing but nice comments and nothing but great feedback from people and all that stuff. So I thought, yeah, no, it definitely was worth it to release this album, because, people, these are songs I feel like people will really enjoy. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, you heard it here first on the Rock Metal Podcast. And, yeah, I'm looking at the Crucible video right now. It'll be in today's show notes. So if you guys are listening in, watching YouTube, wherever, the show notes are available. and the link to Crucible will be there, so you can go ahead and check it out. By the time this airs, it will have blown past 1,000 views, because this will air in June-ish.
Okay.
Yeah, about a month from now.
Sweet.
Yeah, not a large deal, but thankfully you're making some connections with people who have significantly more clout than I do, because being on my show, you won't... Probably worse for you, actually, than good for you. So...
oh, man. Hey, man, but, I love doing this, and I love talking to and doing all the interviews I can,
Mm-hmm.
I always have the philosophy of, I heard Brittany Slays from Unleash the Archers say this, and she's like one of my heroes, is that she's like, no matter what interview or press thing you do for your band, as long as you get at least one new follower, one new fan, one new person listens to your stuff, then you've done your job.
Mm-hmm.
So then it was worth it.
Yeah.
So I love doing, so no matter what the place is, I love doing all these. So yeah, and this interview has definitely been very fun, and I'm really appreciate like a lot of the questions you've been asking, because a lot of it's stuff I don't get asked very often. So
very cool. All right, mister. Well, I'm afraid my questions have come to an end. We have chatted about lineup changes, recording in Quebec, YouTube exposure for Crucible that you guys are getting, Mark of the Wolf, the album, recording in Quebec, being a recording engineer yourself, doing some touch-ups at home. Yeah, that's pretty much everything, baby. So I'm glad that you enjoyed the show and you enjoyed my questions. I enjoy going deep. That's what my audience likes. I'm not typical interview type of format.
Yeah, no, and that was really, I appreciate that a lot. It was awesome. It was really fun. You asked a lot of great questions, and yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on to the Rock Metal Podcast today, James.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me, man. It was a lot of fun.
Cool. Hello, or should I say goodbye? Thank you so much for listening to the Rock Metal Podcast. I've been your host, John Harris. Please head over to our website at www.therockmetalpodcast.ca. There you can sign up for our newsletter and find out more information about today's show.